Rashad Mitchell's YouTube channel. Let's get into the Word of God, Life in the Spirit Study Bible, Ecclesiastes. We'll get into that book and get into read like 6 chapters, and that'll be it for today with that. And also get into the Rickey Henderson book. Maybe read chapters 5 and 6. Be on here for maybe 2 hours. So let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. Ecclesiastes. Now, the author of Ecclesiastes was a man named Solomon. He wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. The theme of this book is the meaninglessness of life apart from God. This was written on 935 BC. Now, the background of this book in Hebrew Old Testament is Koheleth, means to assemble. Queha, Keha. So literally it means one who holds and addresses an assembly. This word occurs 7 times in the book and is translated as teacher. The corresponding word in the Septuagint is Ecclesiastes, from which the English title Ecclesiastes is derived from. The entire work, therefore, is a series of teachings by a well-known public speaker. This author is generally believed to be Solomon, even though his name does not occur in his book, as it does in Proverbs and Song of Solomon. But several passages, however, suggest his authorship. The author identifies himself as a son of David, who was king in Jerusalem. He refers to himself as the wise ruler of God, of God's people. And the writer of many proverbs. His kingdom was known for its wealth and affluent grandeur. But all these elements fit the biblical description of King Solomon, as we know. Furthermore, occasionally gathered in an assembly of Israelites and addressed them. Jewish tradition describes the book to Solomon. On the other hand, the fact that his name is explicitly recorded in Ecclesiastes may suggest that someone else was involved in putting the book together. It's best to regard the book as coming from the hand of Solomon, but perhaps as gathered together into its present form by some later person, similar to the way certain parts of the book of Proverbs were collated. Liturgically, the book of Ecclesiastes became one of the 5 scrolls from the 3rd part of the Hebrew Bible. Hagiographa, meaning holy writings, each of which was read publicly. Each year at one of the Jewish feasts, Ecclesiastes was assigned to be read at the Feast of Tabernacles. Thanks to the person that has loved this video so far. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. The purpose is, according to Jewish tradition, Solomon wrote Song of Songs during his younger years, Proverbs in his middle years, and Ecclesiastes during his last years of his life. So the cumulative effect of Solomon's spiritual decline and idolatry and life of self-indulgence left him at the end of disillusion with pleasure and materialism as a way to happiness. Ecclesiastes records his cynical reflections about the futility, emptiness of seeking happiness in life apart from God and his word. He had experienced wealth, power, honor, fame, sensual pleasure, all in great abundance, yet they added up in the end to emptiness and disillusionment. That's what it resulted in. That's the end result. So, meaningless, everything's meaningless. That's what was said in Ecclesiastes Chapter 1, verse 2. His primary purpose is writing Ecclesiastes may have been to share his regrets and his first-hand testimony with others before he died, especially with young people, so that they would not make the same mistakes he had. He establishes forever the utter futility of basing one's values in life on earthly possessions and personal ambition. Though young people should enjoy their youth, It is more important to commit themselves to their Creator and to resolve to fear God and keep His commandments, such as the only path to meaning in life. It is difficult to provide an orderly analysis of the contents of Ecclesiastes. No outline easily accounts for every verse or paragraph. In some ways, Ecclesiastes reads like excerpts from a philosopher's personal journal during the latter and disappointing years of his life. He begins by stating his underlying theme that all of life is meaningless and a chasing after the wind. The first major block of material is strictly autobiographical. Solomon describes the highlights of his intensely self-centered life of affluence, pleasure, and worldly success. The pursuit of happiness through these means had ended for him dissatisfaction and emptiness. The bulk of the book contains a series of random thoughts underscoring the futility and perplexity of life without God at its center. Life under the sun is life as seen through the eyes of the unredeemed, and it is characterized by inequities, uncertainties, unpredictable changes in fortune, and violations of justice. Solomon can find ultimate meaning in life only when he looks above the sun to God. Pleasure-seeking is superficial and foolish. One's youth is too brief and life too fleeting to be squandered foolishly. So unpredictability of life and the certainty of death cause Solomon to be cynical about God's purposes and ways. The book concludes by instructing youth to remember God while they are young, so they do not grow old with bitter regrets, the sad task of giving an account to God for a wasted life. All right, thanks for the 3 people that liked the video so far. Appreciate it. Now, there are 5 features that are characterized in Ecclesiastes. Number 1 is an intensely personal book with the author frequently using the personal pronoun I throughout the first 10 chapters. Through the underlying pessimism of the author, the book reveals that life apart from God is unpredictable and filled with meaninglessness. Solomon observes cynically the various paradoxes and perplexities of life. The heart of Solomon's advice in the book occurs in the last 2 verses. Fear God and keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. The literary style of the book is disjointed. Its vocabulary and syntax are among the most difficult. Hebrew in the Old Testament and do not fit easily into any particular era of Hebrew literature. It contains the most picturesque allegory in the Bible about a person growing older. Now, New Testament fulfillment is that although only one passage from Ecclesiastes seems to be quoted in the New Testament, there appear to be several allusions. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 17, Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 9, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 14, Matthew chapter 16, verse 27, Romans chapter 2, verse 6 to 8, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 6 and 7, Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 15, and 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7. So the author's conclusion about the futility of pursuing worldly possessions was reiterated by Jesus when he said that we should not store up treasures on earth, and that it is simplest to gain the whole world and forfeit one's soul. The theme of Ecclesiastes is that life apart from God is meaningless and futile, sets the stage for the New Testament message of grace, joy, salvation, eternal life, only as a gift from God. But in several ways, this book prepared the way for New Testament revelation in reverse fashion. Its frequent references to life's futility and death's certainty prepare the reader for God's answer to death and judgment, eternal life through Jesus Christ. Since the wisest man in the Old Testament was unable to find satisfactory answers to life's problems through his pursuit of self-centered pleasure, wealth, accumulated knowledge, we must look for answers in one whom the New Testament says is greater than Solomon, even Jesus Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. So let's get into it, man. Book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 2. And it says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Ugly meaninglessness. Meaninglessness, says the teacher. Ugly meaninglessness. Everything is meaningless. Everything is meaningless. That means that this verse states the theme of Ecclesiastes. All our activities on earth are meaningless and purposeless when carried out apart from God's will, His fellowship, and His loving activity in our lives. The book also emphasizes that creation itself is subject to meaninglessness and corruption. The author's concern is to destroy the false hopes that people place in a completely secular world. He wants them to see the solemn facts of evil, injustice, and death, to realize that life apart from God has no meaning and cannot produce true happiness. The solution to the problem is found in faith and trust in God. Only this makes life worthwhile, so we must look beyond earthly things into the heavenly realm to receive hope, joy, and peace. All right, verse 5 to 11, let's get into it, man. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun, because is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. There is no remembrance of men of old. Even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. The sun rises. The earth appears to go in its predetermined way with nothing changing. Human beings cannot look to nature to find meaning for their existence on earth, nor can they find total satisfaction in it. Nothing new. That means that this verse does not mean that there are no new inventions, but only that there's no new type of activity, pursuits, and goals and desires of humankind remain the same. Verse 12 to 18, let's read that. I, the teacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. I devoted myself to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I've seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaninglessness, a chasing after the wind. What is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing of the wind, after the wind. But for with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. I, the teacher, explored by wisdom. Humans cannot find purpose in life in by themselves, nor can people use their own human achievement to set up right all that appears wrong in the world. The solution calls for something higher than human wisdom, philosophy, or ideas. That wisdom is from heaven, a wisdom that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. Chapter 2, verse 1 to 11 says, I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is foolish. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind still guided me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water, rows of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasures of kings and provinces. I acquired men and women singers and a harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. I chased after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Okay, let's get into the breakdown of those 11 verses that I just read. Let's break it down. On this last day of the year, New Year's Eve, pleasure proved to be meaningless. Solomon relates how he tried pleasure, wealth, and cultural delights in an effort to find fulfillment in the good life. Yet these things did not result in true happiness. Life was still empty of satisfaction. We can only find lasting peace fulfillment and joy if we look for our happiness in God and his will. In verse 12 to 17, let's read that. Wisdom and folly are meaningless. That means that then I turn my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise man has eyes in his head, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtake them both. Then I thought in my heart, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said in my heart, this too is meaningless. For the wise man, like the fool, will not be long remembered in days to come. Both will be forgotten. Like the fool, the wise man too must die. So I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it meaningless. All of it is meaninglessness, a chasing after the wind. Wisdom and folly. That means that Solomon saw a temporary advantage of living wisely on earth. For the wise person has less trouble than the fool, but all advantages are canceled out at death. Thus, earthly wisdom has no real permanent worth. In verse 18 to 23, I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool, yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a man may do his work with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Then he must leave all he owns to someone who has not worked for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What does a man get for all the toil and anxious striving with which he labors under the sun? All his days his work is pain and grief. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is meaningless. Hated all the things I had toiled for. That means human labor, if not dedicated to God, has no permanent value. Even what is left of one's possessions after death may be squandered foolishly by someone else. Verse 24 to 26 says, a man can do nothing better than to eat and drink, find satisfaction in his work. This too I see is from the hand of God. For without him who can eat a fine enjoyment, to the man who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he forgives the task of gathering and storing up wealth, to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. From the hand of God, the author reaches two conclusions. Number one, eating, drinking, and working. In fact, all activities in life can bring satisfaction only if one has a personal relationship with God. Only he enables us to find enjoyment in life. God gives true wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those whose faith pleases him. Thus, we must see life as a gift from God and look to him to work out his purpose for us. Excerpts Chapter 3, verse 1 to 8. There's a time for everything, a season for every activity under the sun, under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain. A time to search, and a time to give up. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to hear, and a time to mend. A time to be silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. A time for everything in the season. That means that God has an eternal plan that includes the purposes of activities of every person on earth. We must give ourselves to God as holy sacrifices. Allow the Holy Spirit to accomplish God's plan for us, and be careful not to be out of God's will and miss his time and purpose for our lives. And verse 11 says, he has made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men. Yet they cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Set eternity in the hearts of men. That means God has placed within the human heart an inherent desire for more than just the earthly. Human beings want to live forever and find eternal value in the world and the activities of life. Consequently, material things, secular activities, and the pleasures of this earth will never fully satisfy. And verse 13 says, that everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil, that this is the gift of God. The gift of God is the ability to enjoy life and live it properly as a gift from God that comes only when we are brought into a right relationship with him and sincerely submit ourselves to him as our Lord and our God. And he then gives us joy in what we do. Verse 16 says, he said, and I saw something under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. I thought in my heart, God will bring to judgment both the righteous and the wicked. The righteous and the wicked. There will be a time for every activity, a time for every deed. Let's just break this down. Wickedness was there. In this world, the perfection of God's purposes is marred by injustice and wickedness. But Solomon adds, we can be assured that God will, in his own time, judge the wicked, reward the righteous. Verse 19 says, man's fate is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits from both. As one dies, so does the other. All have the same breath. Man has no advantage over the animal. Everything is meaningless. So does the other. Biologically, humans die just like the animals. This fact shows our weakness and frailty should cause us to fear and obey God. Verse 21. Who knows if the spirit of man rises upward, if the spirit of the animal goes down to the earth? The spirit of man rises upward. By physical observation, no one can determine if a person's spirit goes upward. Solomon revealed the meaning of this verse when he said in chapter 12, verse 7, the spirit returns to God who gave it. Chapter 4, verse 1 says, again, I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed. They have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. They have no comforter. Looking around at a world that was rejecting God's ways, Solomon saw oppression everywhere. The oppressed had no comforter. It's still true that there is much oppression in the world, but comfort is available, for our God is the God of all comfort. God the Father comforted his people in Old Testament times. When they looked to him, Jesus brought comfort and healing while on earth. And the Holy Spirit was promised as another counselor who stands by us to give comfort, and leaves also an instruction to comfort one another. Verse 4 to 8, it reads, and I saw that all labor and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless and chasing of the wind. The fool who holds his hands and ruins himself. Better one hand filled with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. But again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. It was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For who am I toiling? He asked. And why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. One handful with tranquility, with two handfuls with toil. Hard work in the development of skill are often spurred on by jealous rivalry with one's neighbors. A spirit of selfish competition. Those motivations are self-destructive. God wants us instead to seek a life of moderation, to do good work, and to live in a quiet, godly manner. We must work together and help each other. Verse 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friends can help him up, and pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. And how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of three strands is not quickly broken. Two are better than one. Companionship has many advantages. For God did not create us to live without fellowship. We all need the help and love and support of friends, family, fellow believers. Yet even this is insufficient without the daily companionship of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Verse 13 to 16. Let's get into it. Better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to take warning. The youth may have come from prison to the kingship, or he may have been born in poverty within his kingdom. I saw that all who lived and walked under the sun followed the youth, the king's successor. There was no end to all the people who were before them, but those who came later were not pleased with the successor. This too is meaningless. They chased after the wind. Chapter 5. Excuse me, before I get into chapter 5. Those who came later were not pleased. That means that this contrast between a wise youth and a foolish old king who refuses advice shows how sad it is when a ruler becomes arrogant and no longer knows how to be the servant leader of his people. Chapter 5, verse 1. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Entering God's house should be done reverently rather than carelessly. Be spiritually prepared before coming. Then be ready to hear and obey what you hear. And that's what it's about when it comes to the house of God. This verse is talking about you go to the house of God, go to worship services and worship. You got to come with a mind to worship. To hear what God has to say. You're not coming to look for no wife. Not coming to look for no companionship. Not coming to make friends. You're coming to worship God. When you come to the house of God, you got to come with a reference. Not being careless. Not chit-chatting. Not conversating. You're here for God. To hear from God. And once you hear from God, you're going to obey what you hear after you leave the worship experience. So that's what the word of God is about when it comes to this particular verse. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Just simply saying, when you go in the house of God, you better come with the right motive. Come to worship. Come to focus on God. Come to focus on what is God saying so you can apply it to your life. That's what it's all about. What's God saying and how you're going to live out what you heard after you finish hearing the word of God being preached to you. How you going to live it. How you going to conduct yourself after the word was being taught to you. That's it. Verse 4 and 5 and 6. Let's get into it. When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to vow than to make a vow and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth lead you into sin. And do not protest to the temple of messenger. My vow was a mistake. Why should God be angry at what you say and destroy the work of your hands? Fulfill your vow. That means that a vow is a solemn promise to God that must be kept. Because New Testament believers make a vow to live separated from sin and dedicated to God. When they participate in the Lord's Supper, to seek the pleasures of sin after making this vow to God brings his anger and judgment. For it means that the vow was really a lie. Lying to God may bring severe punishment, like Ananias and Sapphira, for example. Just read Acts chapter 5, verse 1 through 11. And verse 8 says, if you see the poor oppressed and the district of justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things. For one individual is eyed by a higher one, and over them both are others higher still. Observing again the oppression of the poor and the prevailing lack of justice, Solomon reminds the oppressors that God is the highest judge. He's above everyone, and he will give the final verdict on the judgment day. Verse 10 to 17 says, whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. This too is meaningless. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owner, except to feast his eyes on them? The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much. But the abundance of a rich man permits him no sleep. I have seen a grievous evil under the sun. Wealth hoarded to the harm of its owners. Wealth lost through some misfortune, so that when he has a son, there's nothing left for him. Naked a man comes from his mother's womb, and as he comes, so he departs. He takes nothing from his labor, and that he can carry in his hand. This too is a grievous evil. As a man comes, so he departs. And what does he gain, since he toils for the wind? All his days he eats in darkness, with great frustration and affliction and anger. So whoever loves money never has money enough, because money and the abundance of material things do not give life and meaning, and thus cannot bring real happiness. So in general, the honest working man person, or whoever it is, person, woman, or man, the person who works hard, that's honest in their work, who comes in after a good day's work, sleeps peacefully. While wealthy individuals can't sleep for fear that some calamity or mistake on their part will cause them to lose everything. But even if they do not lose anything, they will take nothing with them when they die. It's sad that so many people work so hard for an abundance of possessions, and it's so much better to store up treasures in heaven. Verse 18 to 20 says, "Then I realized that it is good and proper for a man to eat and drink, to find satisfaction in his toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given him, for this is his lot. Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God. He seldom reflects on the days of his life. And because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. Be happy in his work. This is a gift of God. When God allows us to enjoy our work and to gain in a just manner more than we need for our necessities, we must consider that what we have is a gift from God to be used to help others and to advance God's cause on earth." In verse 2, chapter 6, it says, my last chapter, and that'll be it for today. Deal with chapter 7 and 8 and so forth tomorrow. All right. In verse 2 of chapter 6 of Ecclesiastes, it says, "God gives a man wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing his heart desires. But God does not enable him to enjoy them, and a stranger enjoys them instead. This is meaningless and grievous evil." A stranger enjoys them means a person may have everything he or she needs to enjoy life, but still be unable to do so. The ability to enjoy what we have depends on a right relationship with God. If we are committed to him and to his kingdom, God will enable us to enjoy his material gifts. Verse 3 to 6. "A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. It comes without meaning. It departs in darkness, and darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice over but fails to enjoy his prosperity, do not all go to the same place." If he lives 1,000 years twice over, it means death is at an early age is sad. However, long life does not guarantee that a person will enjoy what God has given him or her. A life filled with trouble makes people wish they had died at birth and avoided all the suffering. But in light of the eternal, the important thing is whether we live our lives for God. And finally, verse 10. "Whatever exists has already been named, and what man has been known. No man can contend with one who is stronger than he. No man can contend with one who is stronger than he. Almighty God knows everything that exists. He knows all about us as human beings. How foolish it is to contend with him. We ourselves often do not know what is good for us, nor do we know what will happen after we die. How much it is to trust God and humbly live for him." That's it, man. That's it for the first 6 chapters of Ecclesiastes. Be in chapter 7, chapter 8 tomorrow. Let's get into the Rickey Henderson book. Read chapters 5 and chapter 6. We'll read 2 chapters and that'll be it for today. This is my last live feed of the year. And on a great note. Let's get into it. Chapter 5. Rickey Henderson. Rickey, the life and legend of an American original. Let's get into it. Billy Martin loomed over the Oakland A's the way the Tribune Tower loomed over downtown Oakland. There was no corner of the franchise where the presence of Billy could not be felt. He would manage the A's just once for a mere 3 seasons. But during those 3 years, he was so omnipresent, and those years he helmed the club was so pivotal to A's history that it would be like he was always there. There was one sense in which this was indisputably true. Billy Martin was one of those players who was Oakland before the A's. From South Berkeley, he was one of the kid legends of Bushrod in the 1930s and 40s, and started at Berkeley High just as the migration was kicking into gear and changing the city. Billy played for Casey Stengel with the Oakland Oaks in the late 1940s before becoming part of that very special clique, an Italian who played for the Yankees. Born Alfred Manuel Pisano Jr., his mother later changed the Billy family name to Martin. Billy even had a nickname with Italian roots. His grandmother used to call him Belly, and that turned into Billy. The Yankees were the only team during those years that Italian Americans wanted their guys to play for. The legend went back to the 1920s with Tony Lazzari, then Frank Crosetti, and Joe DiMaggio in the 1930s, and just like Crow in the match, Billy was from the Bay too. The Yankees were Italian America's team, and being a part of that, well, that made you legend. As personalities go, Billy Martin was part hurricane, part tornado, the former, because his vitality could be predicted for days in advance. The latter because he raises could destroy, devastate a narrow swath of his clubhouse with very little notice, destroying his targets while leaving the rest of the landscape relatively intact. With carnage in his blood, Billy was a fighter. He got that from his mother, Joan. It was Joan who was so embittered by the breakup with her philandering husband, Billy father's Alfred, that she never again called him by name, even to her kids, but always referred to him as that blank. But when Finley hired Billy, the A's invited 78-year-old Joan to throw out the first pitch of the 1980 season. She told the Oakland Tribune that it will be the first time in her life she'd thrown a baseball. I just threw my fist at the kids, she said. Fighting was a reflex for Billy, just as it was for a lot of kids born during the Depression era in America who came from bare knuckles towns, where challenge was constant. You had to fight. If you didn't, if you ran, everybody in the neighborhood smelled weakness. They'd take what little you had and keep taking until there was nothing left. The minute you ran, the destiny was set. You'd be running for the rest of your life. And this really was not unique because many a reluctant warrior living in a hard place has had to throw down. Just to keep orders, there's often no other choice. But Billy was different where he was and where in liking to fight. Conflict resolution, conflict avoidance, compromise, these were not options to Billy's toolkit. He was a unique character, an aggressor, and a bully who liked to fight, but also the underdog who threw himself into the ring when the odds were decidedly against him. Anyone who witnessed Billy's fighting streak would say he had a Napoleon complex, but at 5'11", he wasn't a small man. He just wasn't big either. Billy would make it his life work to fight every man in existence who stood over 6 feet tall, 6'5". Even better, Billy had short man's complex, Rickey would say. If you were his height or smaller, he'd leave you alone. If you were a big guy, oh boy, Billy couldn't wait to start something. You see Billy talking to someone, they're over there, boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, pow, it was on. I can't count the number of times I watched Billy get his butt whipped. Everything about Billy was big and boisterous, combative and reckless, noisy and violent and drunk. But Billy Martin was a winner, with a winner's demands, and that was something Oakland hadn't had in a decade and a half. The first thing Billy had to do was to find out who can play. When the A's convened for spring training in Scottsdale, Arizona, Billy brought in 100 players. He inherited a team that had lost 299 games over the previous 3 seasons and played like losers. Creating belief was essential. Part of Billy's strategy was to win spring training games to build a winning atmosphere. We called Mike Davis, whose father came from Mississippi, grew up in West Oakland, was on the McClymonds basketball team with Bill Russell and Frank Robinson. Spring games would go and the other teams would be taking their stars out after 3-4 innings. Our guys were still being there in the 7th inning. He wanted us to get a feel for what winning felt like. Billy wanted the A's to play every game as if it were Game 7 of the World Series, even games that didn't count. He wanted to win everything. B games, inter squads, exhibitions, and little leaguers, college teams, spring training games. That was the only way to flush the loser's mentality. The California Angels had won the American League West in 1979, finishing 34 games ahead of the A's. After beating the Angels in March, raising the A's spring training record to 4-1, Billy took out the white glove and slapped the Angels across the face, telling the Associated Press, "I'm going after a pennant. I'm not rebuilding anything. You may not believe it now, but the Oakland A's will beat the California Angels this year." Ralph Riley also had something else right. The A's were different. In look and feel and attitude, they were so different that Wiley gave the Billy A. Martin A's a nickname that would ever define forever the Martin era, Billy Ball. The arrival of Billy Martin meant change in Oakland for the franchise and for Rickey. The Marvin Davis sale collapsed. Finley was forced in the summer of 1980 to sell the team locally to Levi's Blue Jeans Magnet, Walter Haas. As history will have it, Charlie Finley's last major act as owner of the Oakland A's was to put Billy and Rickey together. Rickey signed for $30,000 in 1980, and for the first time in his career, he entered spring training on a big league roster instead of trying to make one. He was in, and now he prepared for spring training, not with the goal of staying on the roster, but with the goal of letting everyone know he was someone to fear. There was a symmetry that season in his goal of being the greatest base stealer in the history of the game. Like Lou Brock, the all-time record holder and Cardinals' future Hall of Famer, had retired the year before, just as Rickey completed his rookie season. In 18 seasons, Brock had stolen 938 bases, all in the National League. The American League record belonged to none other than Ty Cobb with 892, a record Brock had broken in 1977. So when he retired, Lou Brock was regarded as the best base stealer ever in baseball, at the very least the most prolific. And reaching Brock was Rickey's long-term target as well as his short-term target. Brock also held the single-season record of 118 set in 1974. Only two players in the modern era had ever stolen 100 bases in a season, Brock and Maury Wells of the Dodgers back in 1962. So in the American League, no one had ever done that. So the American League record for a single season was set in 1915 by Ty Cobb, 96. 1915. So Willie Wilson had come close in 1979 with 83, enough to lead the league, and that put him on Rickey's radar. Rickey wanted to be the best, but at that time, so did I. The fact that in the American League, the Kansas City Royals set the standard as a speed team, Wilson was the reigning speed standard in the American League. He was big, 6'3", like an Olympic hurler, and admirer of another leadoff hit flyer, Bobby Bonds. He would lead the league in triples 5 times in his career. The Warriors were also the best team in the American League West. And that combination explained why Rickey was so aware of Kansas City. He knew who needed to be watched on that team. While Wilson was chasing Cobb, Rickey was chasing Wilson. 5 of his 33 steals as a rookie came against the Royals. If there was one thing Rickey knew, Mike Norris said, it was who was in front of him. He knew who he had to catch. The A's already knew what Rickey could do, because after a little more than half a season, there had been too many nights when he was absolutely the best player on the field for it to be a coincidence. The only real question for Rickey was where he was going to play. He wasn't a right fielder. The arm just wasn't strong enough. Besides, the A's had Tony Armas in right. He preferred center field, but another young star, Dwayne Murphy, roamed center with authority and seniority. Rickey had left that off and played center field in 1979 because Murphy was injured, but Murphy will be back in 1980. Defensively, only that left field remained. So Rickey had played left before, but center was his natural position. No matter which players were returned from 1980, Rickey's 1970 season did make one thing clear. He was going to bat leadoff. Murphy had been there, but Rickey brought to the leadoff spot even after just 5 months as a big leader. Wasn't just better than anything else the A's had on the roster, but possibly better than anything anyone in the game could bring. That was a big, bold statement, bordering on reckless, considering that the American League alone had Willie Wilson, the Tigers' round the floor. The hit Rashad of Milwaukee, Paul McCarthy, New York's Mickey Rivers, who can always cause trouble. Nevertheless, the projections weren't hyperbole. Rickey had proven himself a talent. With Armas, Murphy, and Mike Davis, they had the makings of an outfield. The games didn't count, and many a spring legend evaporated once the regular season played for keeps. But even if nobody else believed it, Billy was convinced that the A's would surprise some teams. They opened at home in Minnesota, with Minnesota as promised. There was Joan, dressed in a spring satin A's warm-up jacket, and sporting Drew encrusted earrings in the shape of a J to throw out the first pitch. The Santa Cruz Sentinel described Joan as a 4-foot 60 pounds. The A's lost a wild 9-7 game in 12 innings. They didn't roll over at the first sign of trouble. Down 5-0, the A's scored all of their runs in the 7th inning. For the first opening night of his career, Rickey Henderson introduced himself with a 3-run bomb off Mike Marshall. The style, the styling, the flair was always there, even when we were kids, said Dave Stewart. So when this game started, Rickey was going to let you know who he was. It took about 4 games for Billy to get tossed for kicking some dirt on the first base umpire, Larry McCoy. In a game against Seattle, Rickey was hitting 176 with 3 steals, but then the lights came on. It was April 20th, the second game of the doubleheader. The Angels, who were already Billy's designated targets, the lefty Frank Tanana was on the hill. Rickey dragged a bunt past him for an infield single. Billy ordered Murphy to drop another bunt to get Rickey over to second, but as soon as Murphy made contact, Rickey took off for second and third. Tanana threw the dead left glare at prudent Rickey, Eckersley style. One batter away from escaping the inning, Tanana threw his next pitch just after Rickey broke for home. Bad news, Brian Downey, the Angels catcher, had no chance to get Rickey, who had just stolen home to start the game. Worse news, Rickey did slip so hard into the plate that he broke Downey's ankle. Tanana didn't last 3 innings, and Rickey smashed a 2-run triple later in the game. Then, just to let Tanana know it was nothing personal, Rickey went on to torment the rest of the American League. Within a week, his average went up 100 points. May 19th and May 22nd, Kansas City. The Royals and the Rangers and the A's were bunched at the top of the division, all trailing the White Sox by half a game. But Billy knew the White Sox weren't going to stick around, so the Royals were the team to beat. Rickey knew Willie Wilson was on his other side of the field. In 4 games, the Royals were better, taking 3 out of 4, and they wouldn't look back for the rest of the year. But Rickey sent a message. Whether or not Wilson was even thinking about a rivalry with Rickey was immaterial to the fact that Rickey was definitely thinking about him. It wasn't that Rickey had anything against Willie. It wasn't personal. Rickey just had to have the crown. Not that Wilson didn't sense a challenge. Over 4 games, the two would put on a show on the base paths. With this round going to Wilson and the Royals, Willie went 6 for 21, scored 4 runs, stole 2 bases in the 4 games, while Rickey went 6 for 19, scored 2 runs, and stole 5 bases. Rickey was in the middle of a streak. He was still 13 straight bases, leading the American League in steals. Now they were all talking about Rickey, trying to explain what he was doing to the opponents as he stole bases by the bushel. Ralph Riley weighed in again, coining a term for what he was doing. Well, Riley called it the Rickey run. Walk, steal, second, either steal third or reach it on the grounder, then come in on a fly ball. With Rickey, the A's could score without even getting a hit. He was in his first full season, 21 years old, and already had a style of play named after him. But it wouldn't be hyperbole to say that Rickey was being undersold, because while he was letting Willie Wilson and every other base stealer in the league know there was a new force to contend with, he was scorching the ball at the plate. The Rickey run was a testament to how dangerous an offensive player he could be. But Rickey wasn't a bunt and run for your life type of leadoff hitter. When the A's left Kansas City on May 22nd, Rickey was hitting 258. 3 weeks later, he was over 300. That got him the call to his first All-Star game that was held at Dodger Stadium. He called 17-year-old Walt McCreary, who flew to L.A. from Baltimore to hang out with Rickey after he got permission from his parents to travel, a note from his mother authorizing him to use her credit card. Using his local connections, Walt scored some seats courtesy of the American League skipper, Baltimore's Earl Weaver. Rickey didn't start the game, which began with pitcher J.R. Richard of Houston going against Baltimore's Steve Stone and mostly watched until he enters the game in the bottom of the 8th inning. In the 9th, he hit a grounded to third in his first All-Star game at bat against the Cardinals' closer Bruce Sutter. Not much to see, but Rickey was on the field with the 50 best players in the game. Before the break, Rickey had been a blur, and so it continued after the break, as evidenced, for instance, by the afternoon of July 27, 1980, the end Game 2 of a doubleheader against Detroit. The Tigers manager, the legendary George Parkey Henderson, was already in the rage toward the A's, toward building toward his own team because of the events of May 3rd, when the A's had stolen home twice consecutive innings. On the second steal, Dwayne Murphy stole home on the front end of a triple steal. Sparky fined his future Hall of Fame pitcher Jack Morris $50 for defying orders. Sparky had told him to pitch out of the stretch, but Morris chose the windup, then laid a $200 hit on his catcher Lance Parrish, who so blanked the A's had run all over him They came to the dugout and destroyed the water cooler. The Tigers had taken game 1, but in game 2, Rickey went wild under the Tigers' backup catcher, John Walkenfuss. Rickey swiped 4 bases, the final one in the ninth inning, to add insurance to what became a 4-0 win. It was his 50th steal of the year. It was just what Rickey was doing, but how? There had been Blazers before. Willie Woodson was one in his own division, but nobody ran the base like Rickey. Talking about him through the prism of Mirror Viceroy didn't begin to describe it. It was his aggressiveness that was different, the way he attacked base stealing. It made the competition between pitcher and catcher and base stealer personal. Rickey made himself be seen in the outfield at the plate, on the base paths, and the papers were starting to take notice. It wasn't just the base stealing either, but the whole Rickey experience. First, it was the body. He was a football kid, built like a tank playing baseball. The players noticed the strides toward the first base, the way one pushed towards second could morph into full speed, and the havoc he could wreak without even getting a good jump. There was that violent head-first side heat leap. Pete Rose often slid in head-first, but not every time. Rose ran the bases hard, but this kid was a space stealer who literally put his nose on the base. In later years, Jeff Iverson, the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame, would ask Rickey about his particular style. How did he develop that unique habit of sliding so low, so late? Iverson called Rickey refined by giving him a primer in aerodynamics. You ever been in an airplane? Rickey said, yeah. You see how an airplane lands? Yeah, that's me. I'm like an airplane. By September, while Rickey was tearing through the American League, the Boston Globe ran a top 3 poll of various baseball categories, such as base stadiums for rural watching. Number 1, the Big A in Anaheim. Number 2, Arlington Stadium, Texas. Number 3, Fenway Park. Rickey was voted second in Texas and takes the longest to get into the box, behind Mike Hargrove, the legendary human rain delay. He was only 21, but in his first full year, Rickey was ranked 3rd as the biggest hot dog. Baseball lamps, for being a world-class show-off in a sport that demanded modesty and reinforced it by throwing at anyone who didn't comply. Kansas City's Clint Hurdle came in second, behind Mariner, Disco Danny Ford of the Angels. Rickey was also rated second in best eye, again behind Hargrove, and I said that made him even more of a force. Willie Woodson was having an MVP level season, but he never walked. Rickey walked more than a month than Willie Woodson did all season. Rickey, when he went 4 for 4 against the Indians on June 3rd, his on-base percentage was .411 and will stay over 400 all season. Rickey wore pitches out at the plate. Even managers were complaining about the crouch, and he wore catches out when he got on base. The one curiosity of the Boston Globe poll was less about where he showed up and more about where he didn't. In the category of most intimidating speed, Rickey didn't even show. That went to Willie Woodson, Ricky Williams of the Rangers, Rickey's former back welding teammate Miguel Delone, who was now with the Indians. There was a reason he was overlooked for most of the season. Rickey was just another fast guy in a league full of fast guys. But he led the American League in steals, but the National League had Omar Moreno and Ron LaFleur, both of whom had numbers beyond Rickey's. On August 17th, LaFleur had 77 steals, Moreno 67 to Rickey 61. That year, everyone was running. The big league record of 3,403 stolen bases set in 1911 was in danger of falling. Wasn't that Rickey wasn't special, that he didn't yet stand out from his peers with more experience. There was a number, though, that he could change that, 100. LaFleur told the Associated Press that he couldn't beat Brock's record of 118. That wasn't happening, but he wanted to reach 100 steals. That's a lot of steals and a lot of running, but it's not impossible. Brock stole that year, even when his team was 10 runs ahead. I don't play that way. That's why I don't think about 118, but I'd like to steal 100 because I'll be only the 3rd man to ever do it. LaFleur had something else to worry about winning. The Expos were in a pennant race. Every run counted. Game situations were cut into steal attempts. It was important to break records the right way. The A's, meanwhile, were as good as they'd been in 4 years, but in the standings, they trailed the Warriors by double digits. So on September 1st, LaFleur had 86 stolen bases to lead the National League. In the American, Rickey had 66 and led Willie Wilson by 8. Rickey's percentage was also respectable. He had been caught 20 times for 76% rate. But the talk of the league was LaFleur and Moreno. Rickey was very good. He was 30 steals away from Ty Cobb's American League record with 30 games remaining. but LaFleur needed only 14 to reach 100 with 31 games left. Plus, Rickey had stolen his bases under the strict direction of Billy Martin. Billy told all of his players when they would go and when they would not. He took credit for the A's steering steal of home, just as he took credit back in '69 when he was managing the Twins and Rod Carew tied the big league record by stealing home 7 times in a single season. Billy would tell everyone that sure the players were fast and talented, but he was the secret ingredient to successful base run dealing for record breaking base stealing that actually was in the National League. Billy was right. The White Sox didn't stay in the race. They lost 90 games that year. He also was right about the defending American League West champions Angels. They lost 95. The Royals listed everyone and swept the Yankees 3 straight in the American League Championship Series. Lost to the Phillies in the 1980 World Series. Billy was right about everything else as well. His A's were actually pretty good. 3 straight 90 loss seasons were history. Billy's spring training strategy of winning every game had created the belief in themselves that young teams need. And their surprising 83-win season was a huge success. The winning required some heavy lifting. Rick Langford, Mike Norris, and Mike Kegel with 1, 2, 3 in the league in complete games. Their arms held together with masking tape, grimaces, and a very cagey ability to expertly dodge the ball. Jim Hackey recalled a road trip to Milwaukee and over drinks and laughs in a hotel bar. The guys would explain how they wet the ball. None of that nonsense with a saline behind the ear or on the bill of the cap. That was for amateurs. The inseam of the paint leg was the proper spot. The player just looked like he was adjusting his cup. Never saw anything suspicious in that. Notice the guy Rickey once said was garbage and wasted his talent, though A in Jersey City won 22 games, a 20-game winner for the first time in his career. Notice was forever now a member of the Black Aces, the exclusive group of American-born, English-speaking black pitchers who had won 20 games in the season. Everyone's talking about the potential of the A's outfield, and now they delivered. Arms hit 35 home runs, drove in 109. Number at the beginning of the season was comparing Murphy to Gary Maddox. The great Phillies human vacuum and center, but the way he chased down everything, the A's were still 12th out of 14 teams in attendance, with the number of fans swinging through the turnstiles nearly tripled. The reign of Charlie Finney was officially over. I believe was good that year, maybe his best year ever managing. He should have won Manager of the Year, but all odds, the award didn't yet exist. For a man in complete control, there was one thing Billy was unsure about. That was Rickey. Billy was the big man in Oakland. He was home. His team was playing in his combative, aggressive image. Rough Riley had given his team the nickname that stuck. The A's didn't even make the playoffs, but Billy Ball will be remembered throughout the decades as surely as the Gas House game, the Big Red Machine. But the A's were winning Billy's way. Billy The A's were winning Billy's way. Billy hung out with his players, the ones he liked the least. He got on well with Mike Norris, who was his sounding board whenever there was a clubhouse issue, especially with the black guys. Norris and Billy, along with Billy's trusty deputy pitching coach Art Fowler, would have a drink on the road. No matter what his team he was managing, Billy always felt that he had a rapport with his players. Billy felt that he could connect with the black players too, but Rickey, nothing. Billy lived up to his rep as volatile, but when it came to baseball, he lived up to the other part of his rep. He didn't miss a strangle strategy or strategic opportunity. He was as shrewd as they came. The shrewdness would explain how September 1st, with 30 games left in the season, Rickey had 66 stolen bases and will finish the season with 100, breaking the Ty Cobb's All-American League record, which has stood for 65 years. Rickey stole 34 bases in his final 31 games, including 31 in 27 games in September. In the process, he shattered the A's single-season stolen base record of 75, yet by Billy North in 1976 by the entire 1980 season. Rickey had not stolen more than 18 bases in any one month because Billy tightly controlled the running game. There could be but one explanation for Rickey's final month explosion. Billy knew he needed Rickey to trust him. He knew the only way to do that was to be an ally in helping him achieve his personal goals. So on September 4th, the A's killed Baltimore 7-1, and Rickey stole 3 bases off Rick Dempsey, forced him into an error. 2 of those steals came with the A's up by 6 runs. Rickey would steal 13 straight bases over the next 9 games. Twice in a month, Rickey stole 4 bases, once against the Royals, and again on September 27th against Milwaukee. That was the night he came to the ballpark with 92 steals on the season, and then tied Cobb, swiping in the second and third with a 4-run lead in the 6th inning. Rickey grabbed the record 3 nights later against the White Sox when he hit a single in the 6th off Dewey Robinson. Then stole second off catcher Marv Foley. The penultimate game of the season up in Milwaukee, Rickey reached on a fielder's choice, stole second for number 99, and then third for number 100. He finished the season with 303 average, scoring 111 runs, stealing 100 bases, walking 117 times, clearing the fence 9 times. Everyone was watching, but that wasn't necessarily a good thing, because Ryan, with his managed to get to 100 steals, had not gone unnoticed around the league. Playing for the record was considered bush league. But stealing more bases in September than there were games was an example of Rickey's drive to be an impact player and his competitive spirit, which Billy loved. Nevertheless, stealing bases the way Rickey really did was constantly criticized. Stealing the record number of bases, like going for any other record, could be seen as a selfish pursuit, something done for the sake of the record, not to win games or to help the team. In his kick to reach 100, Rickey stole 34 bases, was caught only 6 times, and an 85% success rate. Besides breaking the record, he also let the game's best base stealers know that they now had a rival, whether they wanted it or not. It wasn't a coincidence that Rickey stole the most against Kansas City, home of Willie Wilson, former defending American League stolen base champion. Rickey stole 17 bases against the Royals, getting caught only twice. Willie would finish 4th in the American League MVP valley that year, and Rickey would receive his first top 10 finish. Even more importantly, for the first time in his professional career, Rickey finished the season with a winning record. In Boise and Modesto, Jersey City, and Ogden, Rickey had lit up the box score, but his teams got mashed. The Royals ran away with the West, but Rickey was finally enjoying a season of playing important baseball. He was an all-star. He had a taste of winning now, and he wanted more. All right, let's go to chapter 6. Chapter 6. Billy had done Rickey a solid by giving him the gold sign all month, allowing him to win his coveted first stolen base title by unleashing Rickey as a weapon. Like Jim Marshall had put the brakes on him, Billy helped his player make history. Rickey's top 10 MVP season netted him a big raise from new ownership, an increase from the $30,000 he was making as a rookie to $185,000. It also netted him his first endorsement. The little-known Japanese sports equipment company Mizuno offered him free gloves, free shoes, free greeter, and a princely sum of $1,000. Rickey would credit Billy and himself for their growing bond, but for all Billy thought he'd done for Rickey, what did it get him? Nothing, or so it seemed. Rickey confounded Billy. Even as a young player, Rickey was already considered something of an enigma. There was no question about his drive. He burned to be great, but Rickey was often a singular character, someone set apart from the rest. As much as he loved being in the clubhouse, he wasn't always exactly one of the guys. He shows none of that puppy dog deference to the veterans. He hung out with some teammates, especially when Mike Davis got called up, but he wasn't filled with the stardust and fantasy so many players bring when they just reach the big leagues. His lack of reverence, of course, was very possibly a byproduct of baseball not being his first choice of sport. Rickey's stardust was reserved for football. Another reason was Rickey's ironclad belief in his own ability. He did not walk into the clubhouse in awe of everything baseball. A third reason was that Rickey never forgot draft day. He believed he was a $100,000 player who signed for $10,000. The A's had not invested a great deal in him. He'd never forgotten that. The team had ignored Jim Ginn's recommendation that he be drafted no later than the third round. Third round. Instead, they had taken three players ahead of him, which Rickey never forgot. That made him aware not only of his own worth, but of everyone else's. If he had been shorted, everyone else better carry their own weight. His draft experience may have explained, at least in part, one of the A's early dust-ups with Rickey. He didn't want to pay his clubhouse dues. Dues in baseball were as common as tobacco. The clubbies did the laundry, collected the jock straps, scrubbed the spikes, got the mail off the books. They also did all the other stuff. Moving cars, setting up the premium perks for players, like getting their cars washed and detailed. They ran out to McDonald's when a player needed something or anything to eat. They did all the grunt work, all the odd jobs that made the big leagues, and so the players forked over some cash for their services. Big leaguers were supposed to tip their big leaguers too. No matter, Big Rickey still didn't want to pay. His reasons they didn't do anything, he claimed. It was a weird move because the clubbies were mostly kids who idolized baseball, the players and him especially. He could be the most gracious, engaging guy. The Mizuno representative at the time, Jim Darby, recalled, then go 180 degrees in the other direction. The team tried to talk to Rickey to no avail when it got to be a problem they called Jim Ginn. I think Rickey trusted me because he knew I didn't ask him for anything. He also knew I could talk to Bobby if Rickey really procrastinated, but mostly I thought I could say whatever I wanted because Bobby and Rickey knew it was about helping them more than anything. I didn't want anything in return from them. So we went into the right weight room and we talked. He was like, why should I pay them? They don't do nothing. Ultimately, we got it solved because I just tried to tell him he was going to be a big star in the game. I told him everything, everybody loved him. And these were the kind of things that could give a player a bad reputation. This just wasn't a big enough issue to be fighting the team over. For all the excitement he created on the field and the overabundance of swagger and style that made opposing players wonder is how much they liked the new guy. Rickey did not spend a lot of time talking about himself to the writers. He was not the guy in the room the writers went to when they needed to fill their notebooks. They wanted some Richard Page. In his first full season, Rickey did not make the writers' jobs particularly easy, but he wasn't hostile to them like the guys with the fearsome rep, like Dave Klingman, Jim Rice, or that switch-hitting brother Eddie Murray. For a guy gaining a reputation to show me he was no Reggie Jackson talking about himself as Superman, letting everyone know that he was somebody. Sometimes underestimate the magnitude of me, Reggie once said. The ultimate Reggie story took place at a celebrity golf tournament in New York. The sports writer Jeanette Howard was covering it and brought along a blonde, exotic girlfriend who was visiting from Scandinavia and knew nothing about American sports, its stars, or its culture. Throughout the afternoon, Reggie stole glimpses at Howard's stunning friend. When the two finally made eye contact, Reggie looked at her and said, "Yes, it's me." None of which is to say that Rickey was oblivious to the ladies. He wasn't far from it. As his visibility increased, so did the attention in that area. Nor was he above letting people know how good he was. But Rickey expressed himself by the stolen base, not by giving the newspapers gold-plated paragraphs by the dozens. Rickey may have shared a laugh with teammates. He also made clear that he saw a line between the writers and the players' humor, quirkiness, and flamboyance didn't translate to a great interview. The writers weren't allowed to be in on the joke that was between the players. In later years, when his aloofness did not square with the hilarious story that became part of his legend, when the Rickey stories had become more engaging than Rickey interviews, the writers weren't always so enamored by him. Many would just dismiss him as being on Planet Rickey. Pamela thought what people interpreted as distant and Rickey was actually his inherent defensiveness about his education. saw in him that remained from childhood. Rickey was nervous about being the butt of the joke and unsure about using the right word, certainly when he was around people, like riders whom he assumed to be more literate than him. While Reggie reminded everyone that he passed an IQ of 160, Rickey wasn't a wordsmith, so certain interviews put him at a disadvantage. Rickey had charisma, but unlike the Boston slugger George Scott, he was not going to invite the newspapers to turn him into a clown because of his lack of formal education. Scott was a genuine South Carolinian who referred to his home runs as taters. Once when Arrod Hendricks of the Baltimore Orioles asked Scott what he thought of Biafra, the breakaway republic whose secession from Nigeria prompted the Nigerian Civil War, Scott reportedly replied, "I've never faced the blank, but by the third time up, I hit a tater off it." All the writers laughed because of the old boomer was harmless and hilarious, but they also laughed when Boston Globe writer Cliff King referred to Scott as an old bush blank. When it came to the newspapermen, Rickey's guard was always up. Unsure whether he was being laughed with or laughed at, he assumed, and not incorrectly, that the default will always be better. Mike Davis and Rickey would play cards, dominoes, and everything. Another game they played, the strategy game Pente, had a board that resembled the board game Othello. Games like Pente that required counting, memorizing, strategizing, those were Rickey's games. Rickey was a true competitor. I thought he and I were really tight. In the hotels and stuff, we played Pente and Macallan. We were competing all the time. You had to think, study, and do all those things. We set up the board and play on 5-hour East Coast flights. Murph 2 would come back after the game and just keep playing. Mike Davis and Rickey grew close quickly. Rickey and Mike Norris were already close from the Jersey City days, so when Rickey had even lived in one Norris' apartment, it seemed like everyone was getting a little close to Rickey except for Billy. People were now talking about the A's no longer being a nice little story, but made the team to beat the American League West in 1981. Maybe the A's could even challenge the New York, Milwaukee, in the American League East, but Billy could get nowhere with his star player. Billy decided to use a new strategy to reach Rickey. He employed Mike Norris as an emissary. Billy used to love him and me, and Mike was tight. Rickey will say of Norris. Billy used to come up to Mike, and say, "Mike, can you tell Rickey to come over here and talk to me because, I want to get to know him. I want to do things with him." And Mike says to me, "Billy wants you to talk to him." And I said, "Listen here, the way I learned, I cannot get close to a manager. If something happened and they release me, I'll be wanting to kill him." Yep, Rickey slowly relented. It would be Mike Norris acting as the bridge which finally connected Billy and Rickey together. Let's get around a little bit. Rickey also had a need for Billy that went back to the absence of John Haley and Paul Henderson, early dealt men who were supposed to provide a solid presence in his life but didn't. Billy was the boss. Rickey was reluctant to get close to someone who possessed professional control over him. Billy was also wild and unpredictable. But Billy did something the adult men in Rickey's life scarcely did. He took in instruments. He stuck around. The other A's players saw it too. Rickey was getting the preferential treatment. Kicking it was a serious understatement for the annals of baseball. The manager ever ate better than Billy Martin. When he managed, Billy had a personal chef. Billy always ordered from the top shelf: lobster, shrimp, crab claws, the spice pastas, the thickest steaks, the good scotch. He even had food brought over from San Francisco, from Fisherman's Wharf, a holdover from his Yankees days with playing with DiMaggio. He and his coaches Lee Walls, Art Fowler, Clete Boyer would have a feast. That was Billy. Billy always had the perfect caterers. He had people cooking for his coaches. We're back there smelling food and everything. Everybody's mad. And about halfway through the meeting, says Rickey, that was the moment when Billy took his shot in his sweetest, most sugary voice. Billy responded to Rickey's broadside, not with a sledgehammer of his own, but with a disarmament, do you want something to eat? Skip around. 1981, with Billy and Rickey now understanding each other, Rickey took off. Andy DeLoach, brought in by the Oz family and the A's, began the arduous rebuild of Finley's threadbare front office. Old man Finley hadn't spent a penny on promotion, so DeLoach also took on the long overdue promotion of the A's to the city of Oakland. They had become a team that was actually trying to win on the field and in the community, and the new front office built an odd campaign around Rickey. The A's started the season 11-0, then soon were 17-1. Rickey scored a run in 10 straight games. Their season began with an 8-game road trip. When the A's came home for the home opener against the Mariners, 50,255 fans were in attendance to watch them win their 9th straight game. The game was wild, a 16-1 rout. Putting on a show for Mariners manager Murray Wells, himself a member of baseball's 300 stolen bases club. Rickey went 3 for 6, 3 runs scored, 3 more batted in, a stolen base in his first homer of the season. 2 of the Oakland's hits that day came off the bat of second baseman Shooty Babbitt. When Shooty made his big league debut on opening night, April 9, 1981, against the Twins, another one of James Gannon's sons had reached the big leagues. First had been Claudette Washington, then Rickey, now Shooty, represented yet another kid who played at Bushwick, making it to the majors. When the A's signed Shooty in the 25th round of the 1977 draft, Jim Gannon would call Shooty his best signing, not because he had the raw talent of Claudette or Rickey, but because the signing reflected his own personal code. To Billy, Rickey could do no wrong, and to Rickey, that made Billy a great man. Jackie Moore was one of Billy's coaches. He will spend 57 years in the game, 37 of them at the big league level. He's seen it all. Billy wanted to win. Shooty was a hard worker. Didn't have the most time. Billy didn't have a lot of patience for those type of players. Billy paid most attention to his stars, to the guys he thought could most help him win games. Billy liked Mike Davis, and so Mike had a few, if any, problems with Billy. Billy loved Rickey, but to Shooty, that was a no-brainer. Rickey, of course he loved Rickey. You're going to mess with your meal ticket. The word among the black players was that Billy was as racist as the day was long. Billy hired several black coaches, but what did that really mean? It was entirely possible, if not probable, that both things were true. That Billy could hire black coaches and behave in positive ways, like drinking with Mike Norris and treating Rickey like his own son, at the same time rage more harshly at black and brown players. It was well established among the Latino players that Billy thought they were lazy. Well established because he would often say to their faces and follow all the requisite racial stereotypes that Dominicans couldn't be trusted. He said because they were only another way to get away from the poverty of the island. Once they got their money, they wouldn't play as hard. Call them dogs, he did. Anybody who would have to ask the question of Billy being a racist to even phrase it as a question as the gift for being ignorant. And by ignorant, I'm being kind. For Jim Glenn, it wasn't so simple. When Finley had dumped his scouts in favor of allowing the newly formed Major League Scouting Bureau to do the legwork for him, Glenn had been left out of the job. And Billy took over and was in control. He called me and brought me back. He asked me how much I made as a part-time scout. When I told him the small amount, he immediately added $10,000 to it. I've heard a lot of bad things about him, but I can't say too much bad about him because nobody else would have done it. And Billy Shooty Babbitt simply saw a man possessed by the kaleidoscope of destructive impulses, a man of racist impulses, substance abuse, pettiness, and rage who also played favorites to his benefit. Tom Underwood and Bo McLaughlin were two of our relievers. I can't even remember the others because we never saw him. The way he talked to people, Lee Walls, one of the coaches, was a great guy. Billy treated him blank. The ones he thought he could benefit from, he was nice to, but it was just the way he talked to people. I mean, seriously. Mike Norris. Mike Norris beat the Angels 6-4, and the Angels were 18-3 at the end of the April. But now the league was starting to believe. The national writers, including Sports Illustrated, was traveling with the team. Sports Illustrated wanted to put Rickey on the cover and also feature Jim Glenn, the Berkeley policeman who signed the hottest base stealer in the game. The magazine had a theme and all. They wanted to call it "Cop Catches a Thief." When we called it, Scout declined to participate in the article because SI only wanted Rickey on the cover. He didn't like the indication of that he was now riding Rickey's coattails when he was on the verge of superstardom. So at this, his other signings now weren't as important. So Sports Illustrated remained undeterred. The A's were the hot story and would appear on the cover. On April 27, 1981, they went with the pitching. Steve McCarthy, Caddy, Rick Lanford, Ryan Kingman, Mike Keogh, and Mike Keogh and Norris were all on the cover with the headline "The Amazing A's" and their 5 aces. The A's had a World Series winning manager in Billy, a top 10 MVP candidate in Rickey, the best young outfielder in baseball, a pitching staff that always pitched 9 innings and couldn't lose. But then the A's did just that. They started losing a bad May, wiping out the magic of April. The team was still in first place, but just by a hair. On May 29th, Norris was holding a 3-run lead with 2 outs in the bottom of the 8th in Toronto when John Mayberry took him deep for a 3-run homer that tied the game. Next batter was none other than Lloyd Mosby, another Bushwick kid, the one who kept getting cut as a 10-year-old and was Rickey's old running mate. Toronto had selected him with the 2nd overall pick in the draft the year before, and Mosby took Norris deep for another homer and a 6-5 Toronto win. Better me than him. Mike was nasty. By the end of May, Rickey was hitting .330, led the league in stolen bases, was 2nd in the league in his hits and walks. But the vitality of Wisconsin, the first problem was Billy. The second problem was the labor situation in baseball. The players had already struck for the final 9 games of spring training in 1980, avoiding the loss of regular season games, but the owners were still mad over the losing of reserve clause 5 years before and wanted revenge on the players. They wanted to turn free agency to an oxymoron. When a team signed a free agent, the team losing a player demanded compensation for the loss, which meant there was nothing free about free agency. Being forced to give up on a player when they've signed as a free agent made teams reluctant to sign free agents. And after all, it was baseball whose first proposal to the players in 1975, when the reserve clause was finally destroyed, was to allow them to become eligible for free agency after 10 years when the average career lasted less than 3. So on June 10th, 1981, the players walked. Rickey was having his best all-around year, challenging for the batting title, the lead in walks, while also leading the league in steals and runs, was battling for the league lead in on-pace percentage. But there was some concerns. Rickey was leading the league in stolen base with 33, but had been caught 15 times, 68.7% rate. That didn't bother Rickey, though, because most of those 15 times were pickoffs. The rule book might have considered a pickoff as caught stealing, but he didn't. Why is getting picked off caught stealing? Rickey would say, I haven't even left yet. Additionally, there was this other kid, a switch-hitting rookie outfielder from Sanford, Florida, now with Montreal, who came from a football background just like Rickey, who hit lead off just like Rickey, who was built like Rickey, who was tearing his league apart. His name was Tim Raines. And if all that wasn't enough, there was the fact that Raines was currently stealing better than Rickey. When the game was shut down, Raines had 15 more steals than Rickey, had been caught only 10 times, 48 for 58, a shining 85.2%, and beating out Willie Wilson to be the game's premier base-stealing threat. Rickey had worn the crown for less than a year, and already someone was coming to take it. It all happened so fast that it was nearly possible to determine whether the foundation was built on sand or concrete, but this much was real. On October 6, 1981, the Oakland A's, losers of 108 games 2 years early, hosted the defending American League champs, the Kansas City Royals, in the American League Division Series. 1981 Division Series wasn't a regular event back then, but rather an emergency remedy concocted for a season devastated by the nearly 2-month player strike that lasted 50 days and wiped out 712 games. As part of the resolution to resume play, baseball decided that the winners of each division in the first half of the season before the strike will play the winners of the second half in the best-of-5 division series. The A's were terrific in the first half, but only passable after the players returned on August 10th. It was just 27-22 in the second half. The vaunted Royals made the playoffs while winning the second half. They were 20-30 in the first half. That made them the first team in the century of baseball to make the playoffs with a losing record, even though they finished behind the White Sox and Rangers. Even worse, Cincinnati had the best overall record in all of baseball in 1981 because they finished second in both halves of the season. The Reds didn't make the playoffs at all. The season resumed in Cleveland at the All-Star game. Mike Norris had been named to the team, his first All-Star appearance, but even though Rickey was increasingly being called the best leadoff hitter in the game, he was not among the best players in the game in the attendance. Not making an All-Star team was an affront to Rickey. They created a minor outrage. But on August 27th, a news story hit the wires out of Boston, written by Peter Gammons of the Boston Globe, with a historical comparison that elevated Rickey to the very top shelf of the game. Now that last pick was a hefty scoop of exaggeration from Billy, designed preemptively to steer Gammons away from any criticism of Rickey's hunt for the record the year before, betting that 95% of Rickey's stolen bases meant something was a bet that Martin would have lost. He knew better because he was one who set Rickey loose to specifically break the A's Steelers record when the A's were already out. Nevertheless, Gammons featured on Rickey served the requisite purpose of setting him up as the new very best player at his position, maybe even the new Mays in the historical pantheon. It was no longer hyperbole to include Rickey as potentially one of the very best players who ever played the game, whose gold standard was Willie Mays. The division series went by quickly. Norris was dominated in the opening game 3-1. The Royals would score 2 runs in 3 games and be swept out of the picture. Rickey didn't do much in the series. It's a $182 in the 3 games, but his numbers were deceiving. He was 0 for 9 in the first 2 games of the series, but in the clinching 4-1 win, he was 2 for 2 with 2 walks and 3 runs scored. Making fast work of the Warriors set up the main event, the A's and the Yankees in the American League Championship Series, the winner of which would punch tickets to the World Series. All kinds of intrigue surrounded the ALCS. Billy Martin facing the Yankees, Reggie Jackson facing the A's, Billy and Reggie facing each other in the playoffs for the first time since Reggie left the A's, Rickey and Reggie facing each other as big leaguers more than a decade after A's superstar Reggie stiff as I sent Rickey for an autograph. Reggie's expected successor, Dave Winfield, playing his first American League Championship Series. The A's needed to prove that they were ready for prime time. Billy versus George Steinbrenner. Before the series began, Billy proclaimed that his A's were neither awed nor scared of the Yankees. Steinbrenner reignited a season-long feud with the A's while accusing Norris of throwing spitballs by the time the ALCS ended. The A's had been swept out of the playoffs in 3 straight by the Yankees and had not led after a full inning in any of the 3 games. Rickey hit .364, including 2 doubles and a triple, but didn't score a run in the series. In his finale against rookie left-hander Dave Rickey, Rickey fouled a ball off the left wrist. Getty tossed a 4-0 shutout. That was that. The debut of the A's, nevertheless, under Walter House had only made Charlie Finley's departure that much more welcome. The predictions for the future were encouraging. It'll be even better. A's pitcher Steve McCarty said, because Finley won't be around. The A's had rebuilt their front office. Someone actually answered the phone now when fans called wanting tickets. They finished only one series away from reaching the World Series. Easy the sting of knowing the franchise hadn't been that far from moving to Denver. The more popular team across the bay, the Giants had to be watching the A's revival with more than a little bit of envy. Despite the short and scorched season, Rickey was a star. In 1981, he had led the league in runs, hits, and stolen bases. His first full season, he was hitting .310, .415 batting on base percentage. He had stolen 156 bases, hit 40 doubles, 11 triples, and 15 home runs. He backed up his 1980 stolen base title with another one for his 56 steals and 78 attempts. Not up to his standards, but the crown did not leave his head. In the National League, though, the kid Reigns blew Rickey out of the water. 71 steals and only caught 11 times. The Sporting News named Reigns the National League Rookie of the Year, but the Riders gave it to the Mexican tour de force Dodgers sensation Fernando Valenzuela. As a force offensively, Rickey was being called the best defensive left fielder in the game, too. That year, he won both his first Silver Slugger award as the best offensive left fielder in the league and his first Gold Glove as the best defender at his position. 2 weeks left in the season, the handicappers saw two front runners for the American League MVP that happened to play in the same outfield. Rickey left and Tony Armstrong right. In late September, Billy weighed in on the race by stating unequivocally, Rickey Henderson is the best player in baseball. The votes were tallied. Envelopes were open. As Billy predicted, Rickey was pronounced the second best player in baseball. And one of the closest votes in recent memory, the American League MVP went to the pitcher. So relief pitcher, that year's American League MVP was Riley Fingers. The bullpen rock of the old A's dynasty, now of the Brewers. Fingers saved 28 games that year. Rickey finished second. The fine print made losing the MVP even worse, because while Fingers shouldn't have even been on the ballot with Rickey, what likely caused Rickey the MVP was the first place vote that Armstrong received. Rickey was furious. Pitchers had their own awards. That was what the Cy Young Award was for. And by the way, Fingers won that too. In Oakland, Mac Norris recalled that some of the stars had a nickname for Fingers. They called him the Vulture because he threw what he saved for the starter and then pick up a win for himself. Rickey's was a disgrace. Fingers was a relief pitcher who showed up every couple of games for 1 or 2 innings. Sometimes he'd come in and get 1 or 2 outs. For him to win the MVP was embarrassing to everyday players who go 9 innings every game. Give me a break on that one. Rickey had established himself as over 2 full seasons as a frontline all-star level player, but now he was counting that slights. It had happened in the draft when he went in the first round. Thus far, no one's drafted him ahead of him. No one drafted ahead of him was a better player. Floyd Bannister had gotten 10 times the money Rickey got. Bannister reached the big leagues within a year, had already been traded by the Astros to the Mariners, and yet to post a winning record in spite of being in the league for 5 years. Bannister got the money. Rickey never even had a chance to win Rookie of the Year. Starting his first season in Ogden cost him his shot, and now he was the engine that turned the team of losers into World Series contenders. He'd been stiff out of the MVP. Not only that, but everything Billy had done for him. Rickey still couldn't run on his own. He still needed Billy's permission to steal base, something he did better than anyone. The examples were piling up, coalescing into one increasingly bitter lesson. No one in the game was going to look out for him the way he needed to look out for himself. From then on, the only side he was going to be on was his own. All right, so that's it for chapter 6 and 5. I did that. Next time these books be tomorrow, be book 2. They pay, I play. Chapter 7. I'll be on the docket tomorrow. All right, so that's it, man. My last live feed of the year. It's been a great year. A lot of improvement from this YouTube channel. I think it was at 12 subscribers. Now it's up to 199. So it's been a great journey. 199 subscribers, so I just need one more subscriber to go up to 200. So the best yet to come. Next year is going to be a great year. A great year of subscribers. I'm looking forward to it. So I appreciate all support from this year. I'm looking forward to seeing the best that's going to come next year in 2025. They're going to have a lot of subscribers than I had this year. Next year, I can't wait till next year around this time, December 31st of 2025, how many subscribers I got. Because I got 199 right now, so hopefully it'll be like 10,000 subscribers, 5,000, way more than 1,000 subscribers, man. That's what I'm looking forward to in the new year, is have at least 10,000 subscribers, 15,000 subscribers, whatever subscribers I can get. I enjoyed all the improvement of the subscription, the likes. I actually like my content, the Bible studies that I've done, the books that I've read thus far, including this Rickey Henderson book that I'm reading right now, that's finished reading right now, the Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali book, Love Brothers, the fatal friendship between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, the Horns, Hogs, and Nixon book about Texas versus Arkansas, 1969, December 6th. I read that book. That was a very monumental football game from 55 years ago. Dixie's Last Stand, as far as that book is concerned. So I read that book, and now I'm in the Rickey Henderson book. And hopefully you enjoy all the content. The week that was the NBA Football Fridays with Rashad Mitchell. And I did a lot of that this year during this time of doing these live feeds, just talking sports about NBA, about football, stuff like that. A lot of stuff that I've done. So continue to support the channel. I'm grateful for all the support that I've gotten from this channel. I know the best is yet to come next year. And like I said, hopefully I have at least 15,000 subscribers, 20,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers. The more the merrier. But I'm going to do a lot of content next year. So I'm looking forward to bringing good content of the highest order. So until then, told you tomorrow I'll be back next one. I'm going to be tomorrow. The next live feed is going to be tomorrow. Definitely to start off the new year. I'll continue on with the Bible study. Ecclesiastes Chapter 7, 8, and 9, and so forth and so on. And Rickey Henderson Chapter 7 from the book Rickey, The Life and Legend of an American Original. Continue with those the book Excerpts. That's it, man. That's it for today. So until then, Happy New Year. Talk to you in the new year tomorrow with another live feed, the first live feed of the new year. Looking forward to it and many more to have a great year of great subscriptions and likes. Most importantly, you being impacted by the channel. That's what it's all about, impact. This is real work, real content from the heart and soul and the mind. So until then, talk to you tomorrow. Happy New Year.